What's up, everybody? Matt Kajeski here, back again with the Stokastic DFS channel. And today we're talking College Football DFS. It's week 8. We've got weekday slates. Today is the Thursday edition 2-game slate for you guys. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. We're also brought to you today by Prize Picks. And if you've never heard of Prize Picks, these are daily prop-based contests. On Prize Picks, you're looking at player props and you're picking overs, unders on any sort of player performance metrics you can think of. We're talking about college football here. They have passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards, catches. They even have punts on some of these sports like NFL. There's everything you could possibly want. You can make lineups with up to 5 player props where you can 10x your entry fee. And if you click the link in the video description below, you can get 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum and up to a $100 match deposit bonus with your first deposit on Prize Picks. So make sure to check them out. Diving into today's video, we're going to take you to the player usage tool we have on the site, and we're going to talk about the 2-game slate. These games actually have the same exact spread and same exact total, which makes a funny game environment, which we haven't really seen and honestly, as long as I can remember. But it's a 2-game slate. We're going to kick things off with Virginia taking on Georgia Tech. All of your game environment metrics up at the top, your seconds per play, that's basically the pace at which each team plays at, your pass rate for both teams. OL is how many sacks they allow. DL is how many sacks the defensive line generates. You've got your Vegas metrics. And then how many yards your defense is allowing through the air and on the ground. And then how many yards per attempt through the air and on the ground to contextualize a bit. This game has a 3-point spread in favor of Georgia Tech. The total is 46.5. The over is taking money. Maybe we'll see this close around 48. I don't know, but it's taking money right now. Both these teams are fairly fast, particularly so in Virginia. 17th in pace. They pass about 57% of the time. That's despite losing their OC last year. They haven't changed too much. What has affected them is offensive efficiency. Maybe that's offensive coordinator related. But this team replaced their entire offensive line heading into the year. That's been a huge issue for them, giving up 3.6 sacks per game. Brennan Armstrong, their quarterback's been under a lot of duress. His rushing output has decreased a little bit. He still is giving you 195 total yards on the ground this year. That's pretty good for a signal caller. And the volume's there. Again, efficiency's dropped only 226 yards per game through the air. That's on about 35 attempts. But there's not a lot of options. I mean, when you have a guy that has this volume, this dual threat ability on this slate, I mean, we kind of have to consider Brennan Armstrong, as lackluster as his performance has been at this price. He's just too involved in the game to really not consider at this point. So I think Armstrong is fine. It's basically due to a lack of alternatives, but good game environment for him. The volume's there. Hopefully you can just run into some better efficiency. Running back. This is the worst running back room on the slate. They use 3 guys with really no difference. It's Mike Hollins, it's Xavier Brown, and Paris Jones. They kind of have phased out Mike Hollins a little bit recently, making this more of a 2-way backfield, but Paris Jones is just too expensive for his role. He's averaging 11.7 touches per game. Unless he gets there off like multiple scores, he's not in play for me. Xavier Brown, he's 3,400. He's a little more palatable, but he's still averaging 4.5 touches per game. I'll fade this running back room. The receiving room is where we can potentially look at some guys. They're all fairly price adjusted. Keaton Thompson, 6K. Dontavian Wicks, 5.6. Lavelle Davis, 5.1. They're all in the field like 95% of the routes. It's extremely condensed for Virginia. Keaton Thompson, he leads the team in yardage. He's averaging about 75 per game on 10 targets. He hasn't seen fewer than 10 targets in any of the last 4 games. I think he's the safest. Wicks led the team in receiving last year. I think he's a little more of a boom-bust big play threat under the current regime, but Wicks has the talent. We know it's there. He's tied for the same amount of targets as Keaton Thompson. So I think Wicks is a solid pivot. You can probably play both, though. They're very cheap comparatively. And then Lavelle Davis, if you can't find your way to Keaton or Wicks, he would be the cheapest guy I'm looking at. Again, same route share for him as the 2 guys above him. About 49 yards per game on 5.8 targets. He's just not quite as involved, but Lavelle Davis is certainly a solid price-adjusted play. I'd rather get to Wicks and Thompson, but he's live. And then they're returning Billy Kemp today. We'll see if that takes away routes from any of the starting receivers we just talked about, but I think it might hurt the tight ends more. We've seen Grant Misch and Sackett Wood split tight end reps 50-50. Sackett Wood, honestly, 5 targets in the last 2 games. He's coming on strong and kind of beating out Misch at this point. But Kemp's return, we don't know what this does to the offense. Demick Starling had been used as their wide receiver 4, but Kemp should take over that role. He's probably just a flyer GPP option at that price. We don't know how much they're going to use him. Let's go to Georgia Tech. Jeff Sims is questionable for this game. I'm tentatively expecting him to play. They're coming out of a bye. So I don't know, though. Watch his status pregame. If he does play, 6,200 is a bargain for him. Not as involved as Armstrong as a passer, but let's go back and show you the Georgia Tech offense. They're 40th in pace. They're passing about 51% of the time, some of that out of necessity. But this team has shown some life recently since they fired Jeff Collins. Again, Sims, 178 yards per game on 29.5 attempts. That's solid. Not great, not bad. He's really mobile, though. 287 yards. Good dual threat ability with Sims. And that creates an awesome floor. I think he's probably a top 2 quarterback option on this slate alongside Armstrong. Then in the backfield, with the coaching staff change, we've seen a drastic shift in the running back room. They used an even 3-way committee with Hassan Hall, Dante Smith, and Dillick McDuffie under Jeff Collins. They're just using Hassan Hall now. His role has been incredible. 23 touches and 21 touches in back-to-back games. Awesome pass game role. He has a near 10% target share. They're using him everywhere on the ground. The efficiency's left a little to be desired. It's just what you get with the Georgia Tech offense, but he's going to have it here. They're favored in the game. They haven't been favored in many this year, if any at all. So Hassan Hall projects as one of the better price-adjusted running back plays on the slate, given his new role. Could this return to a timeshare? Maybe. We don't know that, but given the last 2 games, Hassan Hall should be rock-solid play. At receiver, last week they did not have Malachi Carter. If anything, that just sort of condensed opportunity for Nate McCullum and EJ Jenkins. Those are the top receivers. Nate McCullum should not be cheaper than Jenkins. It's only a $100 price difference, so it's very slight, but McCollum basically has all of the edges and targets. He has 37. Jenkins has 23 yards, 282 for McCollum. Jenkins, 160. Routes aren't drastically different between the two, so I won't use that as a tiebreaker. You're just seeing McCollum more involved in this spot. Now, if we do get Carter back, he should be a top 3 option on this receiving core. You could play him as a value option. He is essentially the same receiving numbers as Jenkins on fewer looks. But let's operate from the assumption that he misses this game for a second, see if we can't get any potential value. In their last game without him, you did see a little more tight end involvement. Dylan Leonard and Luke Benson split basically 50-50 this year, at least recently. Dylan Leonard, he started the year banged up, but he's back now. It sort of skewed slightly in favor of Leonard lately, but you saw them both, pretty involved last week. 68% of the routes for Leonard, 45% for Benson. So that clearly shows you they did use some 12 personnel without Carter. That's live. I would rather play Leonard at 32 than Benson at 3K flat. But who's the receiver that stepped up? Mainly it was Ryan King. Ryan King had a 58% route share without Carter in the lineup. Now, that didn't really amount to too much in terms of targets. He did see 5. That's pretty decent. He only has 8 targets on the year, but he would be number 1 guy I look at. Stoneman. The other would be Leo Blackburn. 6 targets for him. But again, the route share, it was 58% for King. It was 47% for Blackburn. They kind of split that wide receiver 3 role. I would gravitate to King, albeit very slightly. You could play both of these guys if Carter misses the game. Second game, we go to Troy, South Alabama. Same exact spread, same exact total. 3 points in favor of South Alabama, 46.5 total. This game is a little slower. Troy is 95th in pace. They pass 52% of the time. South Alabama is 56th in pace. That's slightly above average. They've got a 49% pass rate. A tough game to evaluate. 2 good defenses overall. If you look across the metrics, I think the best matchup to explain is probably South Alabama via the passing game for Troy. South Alabama a little weaker on defense in terms of their pass, but quarterback for Troy is kind of hard to evaluate. Gunnar Watson got hurt in their last game. Coaching staff said he could have returned, but Jarrett Deggy was playing well, so they just left him in there. That's a concern for Watson, at least. Any slip up, does Deggy play? Do they rotate Deggy regardless? I don't know. Watson's actually been really efficient, so there's not really a strong merit for Deggy to play, but Deggy's been good too. Neither of them run. They're both negatives on the ground, as you can see on the screen. Negative 94 yards for Watson, negative 20 for Deggy. Watson does average 280 yards per game, and again, he's been knocked out of a few, so there is a ceiling. It has to come via the air. It puts him a price-adjusted tick below the quarterbacks in the previous game, but for tournaments, you can play Watson. Deggy's probably out for me unless we get Newsy starts. In the backfield, they use 2 guys. It's DK Billingsley and Kamani Vidal. These guys have essentially the same workload on the ground. They both have 77 carries, but the pass game role is much different. Vital, 20 targets, and I got to scroll down a little bit to even see Billingsley's number. I believe it's 2. Yeah, Billingsley, 2 targets. So Vital's out-targeted him 20-2. With that said, the roles of ping pong, like 3 weeks ago, Billingsley, 23 carries, Vital 5. The next week, 19 carries, Vital, 9 Billingsley. Last week, it was 17 Billingsley, 10 Vital. So you can see it's ping ponging back and forth between them. Billingsley is just more efficient on the ground, but Vital's a better pass catcher. So these guys are in clearly defined roles. Price adjusted, Billingsley's 3.2K. So he's your value play. Vital at 5.7. He's fine. He has a higher floor because of that pass game role, but I'm going to mix and match both these players. In the receiving game, Jabari Barber, he's out. You're not going to see him. This receiving room is a complete mess. Let me bring you to the routes. This is going to be the way we have to differentiate, I think. With that said, Tez should be their leader overall. Now, his routes, he only played, let's see here, 55%, then 63% in the last 2 games. So he's far from a mainstay in the lineup. He does not have the same role as, like a Virginia receiver. But Tez, 477 yards. That's about 80 yards per game, only on 5.3 targets. He's number 1. He's just a little expensive. I'd rather play a Virginia guy than him. Their number 2 right now looks like Deshaun Stoudemire, 3,800, 48 yards per game for him. His routes went from 77% down to 34%. Couldn't find any indication of an injury. So Troy was in a close game too. I don't think this is game script. He's a semi-volatile second option here, but he's cheap. I'm fine with Stoudemire if that's where you go. And then let's just go through the routes for the rest of these guys. Marcus Rogers last week, 44% route rate. Rajay Johnson, 50% route rate. Devontae Ross, 59%. Then we get to the tight ends. Michael Vice, 28%. Clayton Olendick, 53. So to rank them, let's rank them because everybody is essentially the min price once you get behind Stoudemire. It's number 1 Teds without a doubt. Stoudemire's 2. And then I think among that, it would be Marcus Rogers 3 for me. Rajay Johnson 4 because he's a little more expensive than Rogers. Then I'd play Devontae Ross. I don't think you need to get too crazy after that. We're in pure GPP territory, but that is how I would rank them. Again, very volatile situation. For South Alabama, we've got Carter Bradley starting. This offense, again, 56th in pace, 49% pass rate. Bradley's not the most mobile, 61 yards on the year, but he has been efficient as a passer, 277 per game through the air and 33 attempts. He's facing a really difficult Troy defense who allows 6.3 yards per pass attempt, 3.4 on the ground. Really good matchup for Troy's defense. But Carter, he's been up and down in spots. He's a bit more expensive. Because you have expensive signal callers in this game, I do prefer getting to the signal callers in the former. But honestly, all 4 teams are live at the quarterback position today. In the backfield, huge injury to monitor is LaDamian Webb. He's 7,400. He's averaging 17.8 touches per game. Really good receiving role. He has 16 targets on the year, but he left after just 2 touches in their most recent game. That opened up the door for Omni Wells and Marco Lee. On the year, these guys both averaged just over 5 touches per game. But Wells, he played a little bit more than Marco Lee. Overall, the snaps favored Wells. However, the touches between them were very similar. You had Omni Wells at 17 touches, Marco Lee at 15. Because they come in at different price points, I think I prefer Wells at 3,800 to Lee at 49. But this is all in the event that we're missing LaDamian Webb. If Webb plays, neither of these guys are viable. And Webb actually would be a very good play himself as a favorite. But looking at Wells a little bit over Lee. In the receiving room, no real questions here whatsoever. They use 3 guys on every snap almost. Jalen Wayne, Colin Lacey, Devin Voisin. Lacey's the big play threat. He doesn't have as many targets as Wayne. Wayne's out-targeted him 51-40, but Lacey has the receiving edge 503 to 478. Both are very good options. I think I prefer Wayne slightly for the more secure targets. Devin Voisin is really good too. Honestly, he's the best price-adjusted option here. Just a little more of a possession receiver, but still averages 6.2 targets per game. That's just behind Lacey at 6.7. 330 yards. That's kind of far behind Lacey and Wayne, but still solid overall. Then for South Alabama, last thing is, what do we do with tight end? This position's been kind of a mess for this team for a while now. They used Lincoln Sefcik for most of the year, but it's kind of a timeshare between him and DJ Thomas Jones. I am not trying to play a tight end really with the other options we have available. on the slate for. So this is kind of a position I'm avoiding here, sticking with the receivers for South Alabama. But that'll do it for us today. Let me know in the comment section what you think of these matchups. If there's any players you like, you don't like, I would love to hear it, and I'll make sure to get back to you. If you'd like to reach out on Twitter, I'm at Matt_Gajeski. Thank you to Prize Picks for sponsoring the video. Otherwise, we'll be back tomorrow with the Friday slate. Until next time, good luck, everyone.